Developing the Leader Within podcast, leading beyond limits.
Welcome back, everyone. If you haven't subscribed, please do so right now, as it will help us get our show to others and help us get to our next milestone. Make sure to catch us streaming on Parade Deck, on Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, on the Purpose Place Network, and catch our exclusive members-only content, Going Deeper Within, on the Lions Guide Academy. And today we are speaking with Tara Lafon Gooch. Tara is the CEO of Best Branding Solutions LLC and an international TEDx and award-winning keynote speaker, as well as a two-time best-selling author and podcast host. She empowers leaders to excel in virtual and in-person settings. Her approach revolves around instilling confidence, fostering personal growth, and utilizing proven digital marketing strategies. She offers game-changing methodologies designed to unleash the full spectrum of leadership and brand potential. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Enrique.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you. Before we started, we were talking about how long we've been waiting to hear about this topic. And folks, we will be speaking about the confidence code, unlocking leadership without fear. But Tara, before we get into that conversation, tell us a little bit about you.
Wow. Where do I begin, right? That's always the question. So a little bit about me. While you had my intro there, in addition to me speaking, I'm an author. I also am a coach. And a podcast host. So I wear a lot of hats, just like you do, right? We're good old entrepreneurs. We do all the things. But what do? I love helping other people succeed. What part of my purpose is helping people step into their purposes with confidence. And ultimately, nothing gives me more fulfillment in life.
And that's a very powerful perspective and goal to have. As we're talking about confidence, we know that that is something people struggle with a lot. And confidence is often misunderstood as either arrogance or self-assurance. So from your perspective, what is the key distinction and how can leaders strike the right balance?
I'm going to use an analogy because I love analogies. I feel like they're sticky. So I will use an analogy. Do you remember when you were a kid, Enrique, and you had or knew somebody that had one of those really big jars where you put coins in?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it was like plastic, right? And you put a lot of coins in it. And when you put a lot of coins in it and you tried to shake it, it was really hard to shake, first of all. It was heavy, it was filled. It didn't make a lot of noise. But you take an almost empty jar, you put a couple of coins in it, you can really shake it around and it makes a lot of noise. It's kind of obnoxious sounding, right? One is arrogance, one is authentic confidence. One is an almost empty jar with not a lot to show for it. The other is a jar that's filled with purpose, filled with potential. And we see the difference there in that analogy. Confidence is not arrogance. It's actually the complete opposite of arrogance. Confidence is a quiet confidence. It's something that walks into the room before that individual, right? It's an assurance of capacity, and it simply means that you are filled with purpose.
Yes, and I visualized that, but I understood it well. I remember an individual called me aside and said, Enrique, you have this quiet strength about you, right? And it was just that, talking about how I would come into rooms and automatically command attention without saying much. And so I understand it. I've seen it myself, and a great distinction there that you have just made. Now, in your journey, how has confidence directly shaped the way you influence others? And what practical steps can emerging leaders take to develop this quality authentically?
Absolutely. Confidence is everything. You know, for so much of my life, it felt elusive to me. It felt like other people were confident, other people were successful, other people were gregarious and could make friends and talk to anybody. And why couldn't I? It almost felt like I felt like I was defective in some kind of a way. I wasn't. It was an illusion, right? But I just felt like there was something escaping me all of the time. And later on in life, I realized that it was a lack of confidence that I had in myself, in my abilities, and just who I was as a person. And it really held me back in life. So when I was in corporate, it held me back. I couldn't conduct meetings well. I couldn't speak in front of people. I had a hard time even just conducting a Zoom call. Fast forward now, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for several years. I faced my biggest fears, which were, you know, public speaking, just like this. Even a couple of years ago, this would have been not possible for me, right? I would have been terrified to do it. I would have gotten into a hole in the wall, right? Instead of doing this. So it started with me feeling like confidence was an elusive trait. It was for other people. It was escapable. And then facing my fears one step at a time, what I realized is when you face your fears and kind of conquer it, you realize how small it really is and how big you really are. And you keep doing that, and it's a habit of consistency and compound action over time. And you do this enough, and all of a sudden you start to become confident. And all of a sudden fears start to shrink. And all of a sudden people start to look to you for the answers because you're coming across as a competent person, right? So I would suggest to anybody listening to this show that maybe they feel like they're not confident. Maybe they aren't confident enough to ask for a raise or promotion at work, aren't confident to start a book or a podcast or a business. Start one step at a time, and the confidence will compound as you take action.
Very true. I am one that had to go through that process. And you mentioned realizing it, and realizing there's a level of vulnerability that needs to be paid attention to, right? To say the least.
Yeah.
So, what role does vulnerability play in building true confidence, and how have you personally seen this impact leadership effectiveness?
Vulnerability is the human connection point, right? So when I'm vulnerable, and it doesn't mean that you have to tell your whole life story, right? Or all the worst details, because we all have them, but it doesn't mean you have to divulge everything. But when I'm vulnerable with you and your audience, they can connect with me on some point. Now, if I wasn't vulnerable and I came into this podcast interview and said, you know what, I've never had a confidence issue. I've never had a confidence issue. This has never been a problem. Would you really be able to relate to me? No. Would you trust me? No. So the vulnerability actually builds trust because it builds human connection through storytelling. And when I'm sharing my story about this was not an easy journey for me, and this is where I came from, and this is the steps that I did, and the steps that I help other people take, it gives you that lens to see me through different set of eyes, right? Because it's so easy to look on social media and to see exactly where people are right now and say they've always been this way. This is intangible for me. They have a million followers or whatever it is. But really, none of us started out that way. And if we're each a little bit more vulnerable, I believe that the impact can be so much greater because we'll really pull in that human connection.
Yes, it's a human connection indeed. It grounds you to what it is to be made, right?
Yeah.
I always go back to I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And that's my
Ah,
key
I love
grounding
that.
point to allow me to overcome those areas of fear. Then you mentioned having fear. Confidence is challenged by fear at all angles. And many leaders do have that fear going on right now. Some people call it imposter syndrome, right? And as many leaders struggle with this imposter syndrome, in your experience, what strategies are most effective in transforming that self doubt into empowering confidence?
Wow, this could be a podcast episode all in itself, right? But I'll try to be brief here. There's a lot of advice out there in this world. Fake it till you make it, Enrique. They say, fake it, fake it, fake it. When have you ever faked it and felt good and felt honest? It's a lie. So, my approach is not fake that we don't have to fake anything about ourselves. My approach is that it doesn't have to be faked. You see, when we fake, we're actually diminishing our own self worth. We're taking away our authenticity. So, the best thing that we can do is show up authentically as ourselves. And that's going back to vulnerability. That's a little scary, right? A little, people are afraid of rejection. They're afraid of ridicule. They're afraid of failure. They're afraid of criticism. But honestly, for me, it got to the point where my fear of staying the same started to outweigh all of those other fears, the fear of failure, rejection, ridicule, criticism. And once my fear of staying the same surpassed all of that, because I was just tired of being stagnant, that's when the real growth occurred. And it's facing those fears through your own authenticity and saying, I am already whole. And you mentioned fearfully and wonderfully made. There's no mistakes. And I am a faithful person. And I do believe that the God that created all of us didn't create us with mistakes. And when we try to hide behind these fake it till you make it things, we're ultimately trying to create ourselves in our own image. And it's, again, diminishing our own self worth. So I would say the best advice I have to leaders is don't fake anything about you. It's okay to be scared. Just do it anyway, and you'll see how those fears diminish as you go.
Absolutely. I have a friend that says, do it ugly, right?
Do it
And
ugly,
yeah,
just do it.
just do it.
Just do it.
So we've spoken about leaders, individuals, but I know that all leaders have to have a team. So how can leaders create environments where their teams not only feel confident, but are also encouraged to take bold actions without this fear of failure?
Failure is kind of inevitable in life, and it's nothing to be afraid of. I personally really enjoy what Jeff Bezos did with Amazon. He actually said that if we're not failing, we're not trying hard enough. And I like that approach. And, I think of it as if we're not trying, if we're not failing, we're not trying, we're staying the same again. So, what don't think about the catastrophe because we can all catastrophize, right? And like go to the worst place scenario. But ultimately, what's really been the worst thing ever just because we've tried something? I mean, it's really it doesn't exist like we think it will in our minds, right? So, if we try something, instead of thinking about the catastrophe that could result in it, what if it was the best thing ever? What if it scaled your business? What if it changed the way you lead your team? What if you became an industry leader as a result of it? What if, right? Can we think of the what ifs in the good way instead of the what ifs in the opposite direction. And honestly, I think all of this it's a mindset, right? It comes down to your mindset. It comes down to your belief system. I have and operate in the belief system that it will work out. And even if it doesn't work out, it showed me a way not to do it next time. So I think there's a big benefit of failing fast, right? I would rather fail fast than fail very slowly and agonizingly. So I'm just of the operating system that let's just fail quickly. Let's fail quickly so that we can succeed quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Failure is there. It's an opportunity, right?
It's an opportunity.
And failure will come, and what you do from that point on is a testament about you, not so much about failure, right? Because failure stands alone, and it will come and present itself sometimes to our benefit, right? Because failure may come and you're like, oh my goodness, this is 1,000, and then you try that other way, and boom, there it goes, right? So failure is nothing but an opportunity for you to get it right. And so I love that perspective. So, Tara, I enjoyed this conversation, everything you've shared, and I know that you have multiple things going on. So, what do you have coming up, and where can the viewer listen or the listener follow or support you?
I love it. So I do have a third book in the works that is coming up, and that'll be out next year in 2026. Keep an eye on it. It's called From Calling to Confidence. And what this book is going to teach people is, there's a lot of information out there about how to lean into your purpose, how to align with your purpose. Not a lot of how to do it with confidence and clarity and discernment. So this book is pulling in modern day angst that we all have. Again, how to align with our purpose, but through scripture, through God's word. And I think that's a very powerful match made in heaven, right? So that's coming in the works in 2026. I'm available on all podcasting platforms. My podcast is called Grasp, Grasp, Confidence. I have books on Amazon. I'm also on pretty much every social media platform. I would love to connect with any of your listeners today. Tara Lafon Gooch. It's the best way to find me. And I'm on LinkedIn all the time, Enrique. You know this.
Well, folks, I will have all those links attached to the video, attached to the show notes so that you can support Tara and all her endeavors and everything that she's doing. Busy lady indeed, but hey, worthwhile trying to follow and support. And so we'll make sure that all those things are available. And today's episode is sponsored by the Global Trends Magazine, the Outlier Project, Fantail Services, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, Ascend Meditations, and Chop AI. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. Tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.